think that actors like you and Robert Mitchum seem so much more contemporary today?
I don't really know. I only know, I think I told you when we spoke on the phone that I get a tremendous amount of fan mail. And I get a tremendous amount of fan mail from, young people, 18, 19, 28, a lot of college students. I understand that a lot of my film noir films are shown at various universities when they have a cinema course or whatever. And I get this mail from these young people, and I've thought about it, and I thought, well, maybe those films depict a contemporary look and feeling, and perhaps that's it. I don't really know. I only know that I get a tremendous amount of adulation from this age group.
Did you ever think of them when you were doing them as B films as opposed to the Ben-Hurs? I mean, you never appeared in a Spartacus or...
Oh, no, and I would hate to do that. I would have hated to have been, in a Ben-Hur or a Spartacus with... No, I was always interested in emotional things. Being of Russian heritage, emotion. And as an actress, I enjoyed emotion. And perhaps that's why. Overwhelming emotion, as a matter of fact.
And there... Why don't we cut for a second?
Sure,
Just a second.
Edward Metrick said that the reason they...
Question and answer thing at one of the universities, at UCLA, at wherever, I forget. And, they said, why do you think film noir came to be? And I said, well, from my remembrance, the films that I had seen growing up was always boy meets girl, boy ends up marrying girl, they go off into the sunset. And suddenly, psychology was very, very young at that time, and it was taking a grasp on the society of America. And I think that's, when they got into these psychological, emotional things that people feel and people do, that was the beginning of film noir. And no longer did you see boy meets girl, boy marries girl, boy leaves girl. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it was a new realm, and it was something very exciting because suddenly you were coming closer and closer to reality. And film noir was really reality. And as you look at film noir now, it is reality.
Well, it also talked about other classes of people, poor people, things like...
True.
I mean, you look at all the great stuff, Body and Soul.
Well, that's why I say, exactly. And that's why I say, film noir is appealing. It is very contemporary. You talked about my being contemporary, but being contemporary because it suddenly said, this is really what life is. It's not what MGM musicals made it to be, sort of thing. I wish I had a smashing, hilarious story to tell you, but I don't at the moment. After I leave this interview, I'll think of one and I'll say, damn, why?
Did you appear in any Technicolor movies early on?
Just Desert Fury was one.
Oh, that's right.
Then Loving You was another one, and there were a couple of others in between.
That was later.
That was later.
But bulk of your career is in black and white.
Is black and white. That's true. I made 25 or 26 films. I forget. I think 25 films. Oh, and Variety Girl. I made that, but that was like just a walk-on sort of thing. Many stars appeared in that. But speaking of Mitchum, he's a contemporary guy too. I mean, he is contemporary because he's reality. I'm reality. Was reality.
Did you play with Mitchum?
Yes, I made a film with him. The name of the film?
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. But yeah, oh yeah. And you know what he did most of the time on the set, which I loved? He just sat there, he played a guitar, and in between the scenes, he just played the guitar. then they'd say, you know, we're ready for you, Mr. Mitchell. And he'd been writing songs at the time, and he'd be playing the songs he wrote the night before, and he'd leave the guitar, do the scene, go back to his guitar. I tell you, that guy, I was on a plane from Paris, and he was on it, and God, what a great trip that was, in every respect. You know, I love his, I mean, he disdains most things, and the thing is, he was always right, you know? He was always right in his disdainfulness. I love that guy.
Disdain of what?
You know, if he didn't like something, he would absolutely show his disdain. I mean, there were no two ways about it. He wouldn't make believe and say, oh yeah, that's okay, that's fine, that's good. He'd say, you know, he might say it stinks. And just look his nose down at the whole thing. I mean, that was Mitchum. That is Mitchum. I love his reality.
And how was he playing scenes with? Did he know his lines?
Oh, absolutely. He knew his lines. The only person that I ever made a film with that didn't know his lines, but he finally did when we shot the scene, was Bogey.
Well, everybody loved Bogey. They didn't really care what he did.
Right, and they still love Bogey. I mean, I get all kinds of requests for photographs with Bogey. If I had any such photos, would I send them off? And of course, if I had that many, I would, but I don't.
I think he always, I think the women always looked good with Bogey. He always, I don't know, there was just something in all the scenes.
Yeah, that's true.
He deferred to the actresses.
Listen, I got a letter the other day from someone who's a physicist, and he has put me on internet. Is that a compliment? And it's called the Lizabeth Scott homepage. And he's got all my films and all the photographs and all that sort of thing. You know, I don't have a computer, so I don't know. I mean, this probably isn't for you, you know, for your interview, but I'm interested in knowing, do you know anything about the internet?
Certainly, a
turn on and
homepage on
tell
the
you
World
about it.
Wide Web. Yeah,
And I'm on the whole wide web,
yeah,
true.
The World Wide Web.
Right, but I don't know the guy that put me on World Wide Web.
Well,
I only know
you're a cult hero, heroine.
I know, and now I'm on this, so he wrote me a little note and said, you know, I have put you, I hope you don't mind. And I thought, is this a compliment or isn't it? Is it a compliment?
Oh, it is. It's like having a billboard that covers the world.
Oh, really?
I just
and
wanted to ask you a question. Before we'll talk about that when we turn off. Did you know Howard Hughes?
Yes, and I met him once. Only once. I made 2 films for him at RKO. He requested me for these films. I made one with Jane Greer and the other one with Victor Mature. It was a football film. He was terrific in it. And I had the most terrific director, a magnificent director, as a matter of fact, underrated, called Jacques Tourneur. And I don't know where he is, where he disappeared to, but he was a Frenchman. And the first day on the set, we arrived, and of course we had met the director, and we had a cold reading and whatnot, and Jacques arrives. And his face is about 7 times as large as it was when we met him. His whole body seemed to have expanded, and it seemed he had taken penicillin, and he was allergic to it. And we had this mad director directing us for about 4 days, whose head was, 7 times larger than it was originally. It was so funny. But I had a wonderful time making that film with Victor Mature, because he was fun too. He was a fun guy, and he had to slap me in the film. And it turned out rather well. I liked that film. It was called Easy Living. But what were we talking about?
Wait, you were saying, just stay on the slap thing. When they slapped in those days, did
when
really
they
slap?
slapped, they really... Mary Astor had to slap me in Desert Fury. And you can be assured that I said to both of them, slap me, because that's the only way we'll get realism. And boy, they did it, with force. I don't know if they did it with venom, but they certainly did it with force.
Victor Mature, he really hit you?
Oh, yeah, he really, absolutely hit me. But then so did Mary. I don't know which one had the, which blow was heavier, They were both pretty heavy.